Hey everyone, welcome back to Fiction Flux. We're back with part 2 of What If Luffy Was in MHA. Get ready for more action and excitement as Luffy takes on the world of heroes. Let's dive in and see what happens next. Luffy was finally on his way to his temporary home. It had taken a bit longer to get him inside than intended, since he tried to sit on the hood of the car much to the driver's dismay. Nonetheless, he now passed the time by staring out the car window. Luffy was no stranger to discovering new cultures, so he acclimated rather quickly. On the way he did think about his crew and whether or not he was ever going to see them again. He wasn't worried about how they were doing, physically speaking, since he knows that they can handle themselves. He felt a sharp pang in his chest, and banished the thoughts from his mind. It's best not to think about it too much. Since he can't really do anything about it right now, he'll just push those depressing thoughts to the back of his mind, where it's totally not going to fester. I still cannot believe you allowed this young man a place in your home, sir, commented the driver. He wore a full black tuxedo, leather gloves and a flat cap. He was around 60 years old. His hair had long since gone gray, and he has been the Yaoyorozu's driver since he was 30. When he saw his boss exiting the school grounds with a straw hat wearing teenager skipping alongside him, he wondered if the CEO was going to give him a ride to his family. However, he was confused since he knew Mr. Yuichi wasn't one to do that sort of stuff for strangers. It seems he was sorely mistaken. I can hardly believe it myself. Mr. Yuichi agreed. But, in the heat of the moment, we did strike a deal. There's no going back now. The CEO looked at the teenager in question who currently had his face completely smashed against the window. He just looked silly. Luffy pulled his face off the glass with a snap. His stomach growled. Hey old guy, is your house big and do you have a lot of food? I'm starving. Luffy clearly didn't know he was sitting right next to a billionaire. As far as he knew, every car came with their own driver. Old man. Put some respect on his name, boy, snapped the driver, angry at his lack of respect for his employer. You should be thanking your lucky stars for managing to get into this sort of situation. It's quite all right, Mr. Deko, there's no need to be upset. Mr. Yuichi said tiredly. He was too exhausted to deal with any kind of confrontation right now. Maybe he really was getting old. I just wanted to know if he lived in an old shack or something. Geez. Luffy retorted. He didn't want a repeat of Tama. Mr. Deko just decided to focus his attention on the road, mumbling something about old shack. I'll show you an old shack. Don't worry, Mr. Luffy, you will see in due time, reassured Mr. Yuichi. They have been stuck in traffic for quite some time now. Luffy managed to doze off, having gotten bored of staring at the same old buildings. However am I going to explain this to my family? Thought the CEO, looking at Luffy's passed out figure. The sun was setting by the time they pulled up to the gate in front of the Yaoyorozu mansion. Mr. Deko clicked the button for an intercom and cleared his throat. I have returned with Mr. Yaoyorozu and A. He glanced at a bleary Luffy. Guest. Open up if you would be so kind. Oh, we thought we'd lost you. We were preparing a search party and everything. The intercom teased in return. Oh yeah. I'm not in the mood for your games, open up please, it's getting late. Mr. Deko grumbled. Mr. Yuichi wore a pleasant smirk on his face, amused by their friendly banter. Stand by. After a few seconds the gate started to split down the middle. When it was fully open the car drove through. After getting through the secondary gate, Mr. Yuichi and Luffy exited the vehicle, waving farewell to the driver while Luffy rubbed his eyes to get a good look at his new home. Wow, this is a pretty big house. Look at all the bushes. And what is that? Luffy stared in mild awe. By his standards, the house was just a tad bigger than the places he's used to seeing. A red brick road led to the front of the mansion. Wide and decorative doors were at the granite steps. To the left and right of the road were beautiful and intricate gardens, including bushes in the shapes of really small versions of the animals in his world. The mansion looked to be 2 stories tall, 4 tall pillars at each corner, reminiscent of castle spires. The whole building generally made of tan brick, accented by dark brown slabs. Wayne Mansion HM. My mansion should be considered more than big, don't you think? Mr. Yuichi clarified while walking to the front door. Luffy just shrugged, he was tired. Mr. Yuichi was a bit surprised by his lack of reaction. Asterisk, just how massive are houses in your world? Once the CEO greeted his guards, they opened the doors to let them in. Luffy finally got a look inside. The ceiling stretched far above him where a diamond chandelier glittered majestically. So that's how you knew they were rich. In front of him was the foyer, with 2 sets of inward curving stairways about 20 feet away leading to a secondary story. To his left he could see various doors all leading to someplace new to explore, and to his right he could smell the meals being prepared in what was undoubtedly the kitchen. It's like it's bigger on the inside, Luffy exclaimed. He'd fully awoken once he could smell the food. Yes, that's everybody's first impression. Mr. Yuichi agreed, taking off his shoes and setting them by the door. He scrunched his nose when he noticed Luffy neglected to do the same. "Oh father, you're finally home," greeted a new feminine voice. Luffy stopped his architectural gawking to give her a once-over. She was clearly the old man's daughter, seeing as she wore expensive-looking nightwear. Her raven black hair was done up in a loose bun, and she had inquisitive dark eyes which currently held suspicion. Momo was surprised to say the least. She did not expect any guests. If she had, she would have worn something more formal than PJs. Not, she deduced, that it would matter to this stranger. He looked to be an inch taller than her, and he was just standing in the middle of their home, picking through his nose before flicking it away to land on the ground somewhere. How rude. "Hello Momo. Sorry for my tardiness. Have you been practicing for the entrance exam again?" Mr. Yuichi questioned, completely ignoring the elephant in the room. After all, he was more concerned with her progress. "Oh yes father. Besides that, who is our new guest?" she said politely. She was a bit frazzled from being caught unawares in front of this strangely muscular teenager. She was used to being seen in PJs in front of her staff. She did grow up with them after all. But in front of a guest was a different situation. "I had nearly forgotten. Momo, this is Monkey D. Luffy. Starting today he's going to be living with us." His calm demeanor contrasted Momo's shocked one. "Yo." Luffy raised a hand in greeting. "What? What do you mean he's gonna live with us?" she demanded loudly, forgetting her manners in an instant. "Young lady, you've always said you wanted more people in the house, and I have done just that. Granted it was a mistake to start, but I do owe him my life." Mr. Yuichi scolded gently. He was startled by this kind of outburst. And from his daughter of all people. She's always been rather soft-spoken, polite, and known for having excellent self-control. This is clearly a lapse in her judgment. Having guests and having a new member in the family are 2 very different things. She lowered her voice, missing the "owe him my life" bit of the sentence in her disbelief. Luffy, watching the argument unfold, decided he'd rather not be stuck in the middle of it. "I smell food, and I'm hungry, so I'm gonna go. See ya," Luffy declared. He cared more about his stomach than some pointless family quarrel. "Hey, where do you think you're going? Get back here and explain yourself," Momo shouted. Asterisk, he can't just leave. Luffy, in typical Luffy fashion, completely ignored her. "Momo, I'm aware this is a big change, but you need to rein in your temper." He placed a hand on her shoulder, noticing how tense she was. "He's not a part of our family. That would be absurd. Think of him as a foster child. Who will also be going to school with you. It's nothing so drastic." He reassured in the strange way a strict father does. "School? Do you mean you, Father, what exactly happened?" "Well, you see, it was like this." He begins to recount nearly all of the events, minus the from another world bit, since he met Luffy that morning. "After the documents were finalized, we made our way home with minimal difficulty." He finished, deciding to keep those facts about Luffy to himself was a purely selfless decision. After all, it would be a distraction to her studies. What if he was in league with a bird villain, and now he is here, in our home, trying to steal our personal information and money? Momo tried to reason with her father. After all, the situation was too bizarre to be true. Jojo's be like a. I don't think that's very likely. He's not gifted when it comes to brain power. The CEO doubted he even planned his sleep schedule. What if it's all an act? What if there is a mastermind villain who sent Luffy here so that we drop our guards? And then he'll come swooping down on us like we're lambs for the slaughter, she argued. Those are a lot of ifs, let's focus on facts. And the fact is that Luffy saved my life and now I have to repay him. And this is a good opportunity for you to have an actual friend. Boom, roasted A. Mr. Yuichi unintentionally roasted his own daughter in the process of correcting her. What? Momo was insulted. I'll let you know that I have lots of friends. Who? Your classmates at your former private school. Please, they only cared about money, and have gravitated towards you because of our family status. They hardly ever spoke to you, oftentimes they'd arrive with their parents, who'd spend all day trying to gain our good favor. Mr. Yuichi said harshly. Unfortunately, at an elite private school you will find only people who care too much about grades, or care only about the money they can make to raise their meager status. That's not true. Momo knew she was lying to herself. Deep down her father's words rang true. Mr. Yuichi sighed heavily, regretful about his own bluntness. I apologize, but I stand firm that you can find a true friend in Luffy, and if it turns out he's a villain in disguise you can come straight to me, and I'll deal with it. Till then, keep an eye on him. He heard a commotion in the kitchen. Or two. Now I'm a chaperone, Momo exclaimed disbelievingly. She doesn't have time to form a brand new relationship. Not when she has only a few days until the recommendation exam. Yes, now you will consider this matter over. Do not bring it up again in conversation, he said with a tone of finality. With that out of the way you should clean yourself up for dinner, you're sloppy. Momo couldn't believe her ears. 1 second all she had to worry about was her exam and getting through the coming year. Now she had someone completely new to look after with zero warning. Over in the kitchen, Luffy was impatiently waiting for the cook to finish the meal, staring at the sizzling steaks and sniffing at all the delicious aroma drifting through the air. Is it done? Luffy asked for what felt like the billionth time. For the last time, no. You have to wait for the whole family to start eating before you'll get even a lick. The cook grumbled. Luffy slumped in his seat, cheek squishing against the counter pathetically. She figured that if this young man got past all the security and entered the front door without any alarms being raised, he must be some sort of guest. Which is the only reason she hadn't kicked him out yet. Not even a nibble. Even Sanji gave me nibbles sometimes. Please, I'm gonna start. Luffy let out a loud groan of hunger in an attempt to get some delicious food. The cook just rolled her eyes at his antics and tried to focus on not burning anything. The door behind Luffy opened smoothly, and a woman peeked her head in. Monkey D. Luffy, are you in here? Yep, and just call me Luffy, what's up? Luffy turned to look at the new maid who had just entered. She was wearing a classical maid outfit, her hair in a tight, slicked back bun. Of course. Mr. Luffy, I have been sent by Sir Yaoyorozu to show you to your new room, and give you a quick change of clothes for dinner. She explained. She held up a pair of clothes similar to Momo's, except he got a red top while hers were white. Why would he need new clothes? Asked the cook curiously. Adding large amounts of salt to a boiling pot to devil some eggs. Ah yes, I suppose I should inform everyone. The cook raised an eyebrow at the cryptic start. As of today, we are to treat Mr. Luffy as a member of the Yaoyorozu family until the foreseeable future. These orders were given by Sir Yaoyorozu himself. You don't say, the cook adopted a befuddled expression. She never thought that the main family would start adopting. Especially someone so old and ill-mannered. Yes, it has been quite a shock for all of us. Now if you'll follow me, Mr. Luffy, I will show you to your new chambers, and give you some time to take a shower. She requested sharply, holding the door open for Luffy and giving the cook absolutely no time to process what Luffy living here would mean for her. But, what about the food? Luffy whined. It'll be done in time for you, so don't worry. For now, why don't you go to make yourself more presentable, said the cook with more courtesy in her tone than last time. Okay, but do I really have to take a shower? I took one like Luffy trailed off, and the maid couldn't help but stare in barely concealed disgust. Asterisk, this kid can't even remember the last time he bathed. The maid thought with a twitch of an eyebrow. After around 45 minutes the dinner was prepared and Luffy was cleaned, his hair no longer shiny from the amount of grim in it. A butler who had been tasked to help him had spent the past 45 minutes teaching him to use the shower, and that no, just because it smells good you can't eat it. And yes, you have to cut your nails, they're practically claws, along with various other reprimands. When they got the call to go downstairs, Luffy was ecstatic. Finally, thanks for all the help fancy guy, but I'm starving. Luffy practically leaped out of his bed, his new clothing comfortable and flowing on his body, his straw hat hanging by a string around his neck as he rushed past the butler to the dining room. He felt great despite the trouble. Asterisk, this is going to be awkward, thought the original Yaoyorozus, each having conflicting feelings about the upcoming dinner. They were all seated at a banquet table that was much too big for the current company. Momo and her parents sat across from Luffy. Luffy didn't waste a single second after he sat down to even glance at the food he was shoveling into his mouth. The cook spent a little longer to make it presentable as well. Mrs. Yana, aka Mr. Yuichi's wife, looked at Luffy's complete lack of table manners, then stared at her husband with an expression that can only be interpreted as really. Meanwhile, Mr. Yuichi kept his eyes downward and focused on the empty plate in front of him. He couldn't grab the food on the table fast enough before Luffy did to have any food on his plate. He felt responsible for Luffy's appalling behavior and couldn't look his family in the eye without feeling extreme embarrassment. Hey, aren't you guys gonna eat? Luffy mumbled around a mouthful of food, noticing the distinct lack of food on their plates. Well, I would like to eat. If only somebody stopped eating everything on the table. Momo said angrily. She knew even if she didn't get a bite at dinner right now, the reserve food the cooks kept just for her would be readily available, but still. Really, who? You, obviously, Momo shouted. Asterisk, how is someone this dense? Shishishi, my bad. Despite his response he didn't slow down a bit. Now Momo, let's not raise our voices at the dinner table. Mrs. Yana feebly attempted to regain a sense of control. She was having her own trouble not snapping at Luffy. Mrs. Yana was a well-mannered, soft-spoken woman much like her daughter. She, having raised Momo until now, didn't really know how to punish troublemakers. Since her only daughter was always so well-behaved, she never had any reason to punish her. Now she thinks that buying a book about educating misbehaving children is going to be a necessity. After she was informed by her husband that they would be providing a young adult a home for the foreseeable future, she thought that this may be a good chance for Momo to make an actual friend. She wasn't concerned about Luffy being any kind of villain since she trusted her husband's judgment. By the way, father, I meant to ask earlier, how did it go with Principal Nezu? Momo made a meager attempt at conversation in the tense atmosphere after she failed to get the last grilled steak from Luffy. He accepted it. Now you and Luffy here have only 5 days to prepare yourself for the entrance exam, said Mr. Yuichi tightly. He was letting Luffy's disrespect slide for today. Despite not being able to get any food, he felt Luffy should be given a small amount of slack on his first day. Luffy is also taking the recommendation exam, asked Momo, briefly forgetting her quarrel with Luffy. No, he will be taking the normal exam. But I heard that the chance of passing that exam is less than 4%. What happens if he fails? Momo asked hopefully. Asterisk, maybe if he fails the exam he will leave our house, and I can get on with my life. I highly doubt he'll have much difficulty in the physical part of the exam. Not to mention he's gotten in good favor with the principal after the incident today. Momo grew visibly disappointed. Mr. Yuichi figured if Luffy were to fail he'd be allowed in any way. That was so good. Thanks for the meal. Luffy sighed in contentment, his belly nearly twice its usual size, any traces of food completely gone. Seeing as there is no more food and conversation has gotten bland, why don't you go show him around the house, sugar? Mrs. Yona addressed Momo. Asterisk, this could prove to be a good bonding experience. Asterisk. Yes, mother. Momo reluctantly agreed. Follow me, Luffy, and wipe your face off. Yosh, where are we going? Luffy agreed quickly, jumping out of his seat before deflating back to his usual size, as if he were a balloon. Asterisk, what in the world? Everyone thought unanimously. Momo sighed as Luffy bounded alongside her as she walked through the massive hallways she'd been surrounded by all her life. He kept staring at everything like it was brand new. Not just new, but unheard of. Suwu, Momo trailed off. She didn't really know how to spark up a conversation. Luffy stared at her expectantly with wide eyes. What's your quirk, Luffy? Asterisk, it must be something relating to stretchiness if dinner is anything to go by. Asterisk. What's a quirk? I mean my quirk, right? It's. Luffy paused, desperately racking his rubber brain for what a quirk meant again. He was sure that Nezu told him. Momo looked at Luffy in uncertainty for a couple of seconds. Aha, I remember. My whole body is rubber. Luffy pulled on his cheek. I'm a rubber man. That's it, Momo deadpanned. How's that useful? I'm not even gonna ask about how he had to think about what a quirk was. What do you mean that's it? Luffy sounded offended. I'll have you know I'm the captain of my pirate crew. And my crew is super strong. Pirate crew? You're trying to tell me that you're a pirate now? She couldn't believe this guy. Yeah, we're the Straw Hat Pirates. Luffy put a hand on his straw hat. And I'm the man who'll become the king of the pirates when I find the One Piece. Well, if you say so, then it must be true. Momo said mockingly. What was this, a manga or something? Unbeknownst to her, Luffy thought she was serious and practically beamed. Anyway, this is my room. Momo opened the door to her room. Inside was an Alaskan king bed, big-ass bed. Behind her bed was a large window with beautiful lace curtains. To the right of the door was her computer and a bookshelf. To the left was another door that led to her closet. Wow, that bed is huge. Luffy grinned and jumped on the bed, using it as a trampoline. Shishishishi, this is fun. No, wait, you'll break it, she said in a futile attempt to stop Luffy. Oh, come on, live a little. Luffy extended his hand to her. Join me, he said, giving her that massive smile of his. She looked at the hand in front of her for a second, contemplating what to do. She thought about how her life has been until now, always being a quiet girl, never misbehaving, never breaking any rules, always trying to be the perfect daughter. Was she going to break that cycle now? Will this random boy make her have fun and relax, living in the moment, instead of always studying and training for the future? She took his hand and used it to throw him to the ground. You have your own bed, jump on that one. Boo, you're no fun. He shook himself off and stuffed his straw hat on his head. Let's continue our adventure. Luffy darted outside. Momo just sighed and followed him out of her room, feeling a little guilty about her shameful behavior. After walking in an uncomfortable silence for much too long, Momo thought she should ask about his intentions, see what made him tick. So, Luffy, what's the deal with your straw hat? You seem pretty attached to it. It never leaves my side. He grew uncharacteristically quiet, taking the worn straw hat in hand. This hat carries a promise, and once I fulfill it, I will return it back to Shanks. She blinked. From what Momo has seen of Luffy so far, she thought he was just another happy-go-lucky idiot with an absurd amount of luck. But the way he said that, the conviction in his voice was undeniable. She was starting to form another opinion of the straw-hatted stranger. They continued their walk. This is my father's office, but we aren't allowed to go in, said Momo, arriving at a black stained door with a golden handle. Is there anything interesting there? Luffy, for some reason, sniffed the door. Not really, just paperwork. Momo shrugged. Okay, let's go. After the next 30 rooms, Luffy finally figured something out. This place is big, but it's really boring. Luffy sighed. Well, I'm sorry, Luffy, but most rooms are either guest rooms, used by the staff, or miscellaneous places you'd find in a typical billionaire household. Momo explained. Of course, she also couldn't blame the guy. It all was rather similar. Isn't there anything cool here? Luffy whined. He really thought that a place this big would be better. Actually, I think I have just the place. Momo responded. She had a location in mind. Asterisk, this has to interest him. Asterisk. Yay, Luffy cheered. After walking a bit through a number of doors, they arrived at a brightly lit place with a garage door. Wow, there are so many of them, Luffy cheered. In the garage were at least 12 super expensive sports cars, along with rare and priceless vintage ones as well. You're right, this is way less boring. He ran over to Bugatti La Voiture Noire and jumped on its hood. I'm not even surprised. Momo thought tiredly. Hey, get down from there, it's really pricey, she warned. Luffy giggled, stars nearly visible in his eyes. He slapped the hood of the car. Go robot, shoot lasers. When nothing happened, Luffy grew confused and turned to Momo excitedly. Hey Moo, make it turn into a robot, and shoot beams, he demanded. These are like Frankie's, right? So come on. Moo. My name is Momo. And these cars don't do that. They just go a bit faster and look better than everyone else's. My father likes to collect them. It was almost shocking the way Luffy deflated in disappointment in less than a second. Wait, really? Well, then what's the point? He groaned, sliding off the car. They don't even combine into one big robot, he asked with the little hope he had left. She raised an eyebrow. What, like Transformers? The movie? No, that'd be ridiculous. In a simple sentence, she completely crushed Luffy's hopes of getting to ride in a big robot. Momo took note of Luffy's saddened state and awkwardly patted him on the back. Well, that's not all we have here. Let me show you one more place that might interest you, she offered. Luffy nodded and the pair exited the garage. After some light traveling down a flight of stairs, they arrived at Momo's personal gym. Oh, it's like where Zoro trains, but really small and wimpy. From what Luffy could discern, this place was just a way weaker version of Sunny's crow's nest. Except this one had a lot more mirrors on the walls. It was brightly lit up, similar to the light of the day. There were various different and new machines he didn't recognize, but he did see a bunch of really small metal discs that kinda reminded him of the ones Zoro used all the time. It's not wimpy. This is my gym. It's where I train so that I can become a strong hero. Momo said with pride. Oh, I didn't know you wanted to be a hero. This is where you train. Luffy stared off as if he was reminiscing. I trained on an island with giant animals and an old samurai guy in a prison. I can't tell if you're pulling my leg or not. She sighed. Luffy made his way to a nearby bag that was hanging from the ceiling and tapped it experimentally, watching it gently swing. What's this thing? It's a punching bag. You punch it to improve balance, coordination, and technique. Speaking of, I should probably train with it more. I'm not too good at one-on-one fighting. I get overwhelmed too easily. She answered shamefully. Luffy stopped paying attention after the first sentence. Asterisk, it can do all that. He looked at his fist and then at the punching bag. A mischievous grin overtook his lips before he punched it with all his physical might. Momo's jaw literally dropped when she saw his fist go cleanly through the punching bag, sand blasting out the other side and splattering against the mirrors. Maybe you weren't kidding. She muttered to herself, not quite believing what she just witnessed. Huh, I don't feel any stronger, I'm just all sandy now. Do you have anything else? Luffy yawned. Momo focused up. No, I think we've had enough exploring for the time being. It's already late enough and we've had a long day. Besides, you must be pretty tired. She yawned in courtesy of Luffy's yawn. I legit yawned writing this. Bro, same HM. Fine, that sounds like a good idea. Luffy agreed, wiping the sleepiness away from his eyes and heading to his room, leaving a sandy trail in his wake. The next morning, Luffy was the last one to wake up and start the day around 11 o'clock in the afternoon, long after everyone else had gotten ready. After he went to the bathroom to freshen himself up at the butler's urging. He quickly slid along the banister leading to the first floor, his room being on the second, and burst into the kitchen. "Hi, food?" he asked the head chef. "Good morning, Mr. Luffy, had a long night, eh?" she greeted kindly. Despite his sudden appearance, she aptly began preparing his breakfast, deciding to make it larger than normal after seeing him eat at dinner. "It was okay, anyway, you do have food, right?" Luffy repeated the more important topic on his mind. It was his first night, so he didn't sleep well. She didn't need to hear that though. "Yes, food, just let me put it on a plate, and I'll give it to you in a second." She reached for a plate in the cupboard, hesitated, then grabbed one more. "Thanks. So where did everyone go? It's really quiet." He wasn't used to waking up to pure silence. Typically he could hear his crewmates snoring around him, along with the sloshing of the ocean, the gulls of seagulls, and the creak of the thousand sunnies planks among the waves. If by everyone you mean the Yaoyorozus, Mr. and Mrs. Yaoyorozu have gone to do their jobs, while Mrs. Momo has started studying in the main living room," she replied. Putting the finishing touches on his meal, she spun around with a flourish and stopped with the plate in front of him. "Voila! Food, thanks for the meal." It was the only warning she got before Luffy literally stuck the whole 2 plates full of food down his throat. "Wow, that was delicious. You're almost as good as my chef Sanji," Luffy praised with a content smile. Little did she know that was probably the highest compliment she'd ever get from Luffy. "Well, thanks, I'm not one of the top chefs in the world for nothing," she said, still bewildered by whatever the heck she just witnessed. Asterisk, that was porcelain, is he okay? "I can tell, off to the living room I go then." He waved farewell, then proceeded to walk very confidently in the wrong direction. After half an hour of checking almost every door in the mansion, he finally found the 3rd living room, where he found Momo sitting on a plush couch. She had 3 different books wide open in front of her on a large coffee table and was staring at them intently. "There you are. You hid yourself pretty well. It took me forever to find you in this huge place," Luffy said while jumping onto the couch, shifting Momo around. Luffy huffed. "I thought you'd be doing something more interesting." "Hide myself? I didn't hide. I was just practicing my chemistry," Momo said in confusion, taking her attention away from her books for a moment, sparing him the brief eye contact. "Oh yeah? Then how come you weren't in the living room? The chef lady said you were there and she wouldn't lie." Luffy thought he caught her red-handed. "You do know there is more than one living room, right?" Momo sighed, and refocused on her reading. "If you think you're so good at finding people in this puzzle house, then try and find me." Luffy ran out of the room, then poked his head back in quickly. "Count to 100 then try to find me." He giggled and darted away. "What? I can't play games with you, I have to study. And you should study too." She raised her voice to make sure Luffy caught that last part. Spoiler alert. He didn't. 3 hours later. "That's enough chemistry for now. Now where did I leave my algebra books?" she murmured to herself, leaving the living room in search of more reading material. As she approached the stairs, she saw an inconspicuous straw hat curled in on himself just beneath them. "Don't tell me." She felt a nasty sense of guilt build in her gut. Don't tell me he was hiding all this time. As she approached him, she heard a faint snoring sound. And after getting closer, this guy fell asleep. She basically shouted in her mind. Luffy was completely knocked out. He had a snot bubble in his nose, drool running down his chin, his arms resting on his knees, and his head on top of those. She tapped his shoulder. "Wake up." No response. She tapped him again. Nothing. "Hey, wake up." She grabbed his shoulders and shook him, then tugged his ear. His nose. Still nothing. She started to feel a sense of dread in the back of her mind. "Hey, this isn't funny, wake up." Out of panic, she hit him with a strong slap to the face and Luffy finally woke up. "Oh, thank God, I thought something was wrong," Momo said with a huge sigh of relief. "Huh, what happened?" Luffy garbled, still half asleep when he remembered why he was hiding underneath the stairs in the first place. "Oh yeah, see, I win. I bet it took you a whole lot longer to find me, huh? She decided not to ruin his happy mood and played along. Yeah, I've been looking for 3 hours, you hid yourself very well. This was a straight-up lie. He was clearly visible the second she exited the downstairs living room through the gaps in the stairs. Don't think flattery will work on me, Luffy said with a wide dopey grin on his face, indicating that flattery did in fact work on him. Anyway, what do you want to do now? As much as I would love to relieve your boredom, Luffy, unfortunately, I still have a lot of studying and training to do. The truth was that she didn't really need to study, since she basically memorized every single book in the mansion. She just liked feeling prepared. Then I'll help, Luffy offered, beaming with energy. You sure? Momo was skeptical. It's just that, you don't really strike me as the academic type. How hard can it be? He'd seen Robin read a lot, and she did it fine. Apparently, it was impossibly hard, because the second Luffy sat down and looked at a book for more than 5 seconds, he instantly got code. Amazing, I don't even think I can make tranquilizers that powerful, she said, and grabbed a blanket to put it around Luffy's shoulders. After another hour of studying, her neck really wasn't happy with staring down at a desk, so she stretched her arms out, shoulders popping gratefully, and decided that now seemed like a good time to hit the gym. Leaving Luffy alone on the couch as she quietly left the room. However, no more than 10 seconds after she left, Luffy swung the door open running after her. Hey! Where are you going? Can I come? What the? Momo was startled by his sudden appearance. I was just thinking of doing some exercises. Do you want to join me? Asterisk, how did he know I left the room? I didn't think I was that loud. Yosh, that sounds less boring than studying. Luffy laughed as he followed her. Luffy is able to sense when a person's aura becomes more active, along with its general location. However, with the ridiculous puzzly nature of this house, it took him forever to actually get to where she was. After Momo switched to her gym clothes, Luffy decided to stick to his regular clothing. Well, the clothing the Andreiuhs had provided for him that were similar to his original style. Or a red t-shirt, his prized chanclas, and loose-fitting jeans. Thankfully, they made it to the gym without incident. Alright, I'm gonna do a bit of cardio. You can. You know what, just don't break anything, she said, plugging in her earbuds and getting on the treadmill. Okay. Luffy agreed, going to a rack of barbells averaging 5 to 100 kilos. He lifted the rack with one arm, without any visible difficulty, making Momo's jaw drop. You said your quirk is rubber. How are you so strong? I told you, I trained a lot, Luffy said plainly. This place is too small for me to actually train, so I'm just gonna take another nap. This was the only response she would get from Luffy before he settled down on a couple of gym mats and fell asleep. Deciding not to question it more, she continued her workout. This, more or less, was how the first couple of days played out. Luffy would constantly ask Momo to go on an adventure with him, or would reshape her worldview by doing something drastically weird. However, once she put on some cartoons, Luffy was enthralled by the magic of television, therefore, he stopped bothering Momo as much. 4 days later. There was one more day until the exams began. Momo was nervous to say the least, moving around the living room with a book in her hand, occasionally walking in front of Luffy's TV. Stop that. I'm trying to see what this mouse and cat will do, Luffy said seriously. How can you be so calm? I mean, look at me. With my recommendation exam, it's bound to be a little easier, I hope. And I'm at my wit's end. But your exam is supposed to have a 3% acceptance rate. I checked it last night when I couldn't sleep, and I haven't seen you study or train, not once. Momo was appalled by Luffy's calm demeanor. It's like he doesn't realize this is his one and only chance to join UA. Stop bothering me. Worrying about it is pointless. Besides, who cares if I don't get in or not? I don't want to be a hero anyway. I can't even focus on my cartoons with all your pacing, said Luffy in irritation, turning off the TV. The first time he didn't know how to use the TV, so he just left it on, the whole night. Thankfully the walls were soundproof. The second time he couldn't find the off button, and instead of leaving it on, he just threw it out the window. Suffice to say that the parents and staff weren't happy about that. If you're just gonna be a worrywart, then let's go on an adventure, Luffy offered instead. What? Of course not. I still have to study to make sure I'm 100% prepared. Momo deadpanned, gluing her eyes to a book titled, How to Be a Hero a Study. Luffy could have sworn he'd seen her reread that same book 8 times already. You always have to study. Luffy whined. It's time for a change of pace. What do you mean, wah? Momo found herself thrown over Luffy's shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Potato counter. 1. Luffy. Put me down right now? This is harassment. No way. You've been studying non-stop ever since I got here. You need adventure. Luffy completely ignored Momo's fists pounding on his back as he ran towards the front door. Wait, Luffy, okay, I give up. But let's just play in the mansion. Momo realized what Luffy was trying to do, and there was no way she was going into town, especially alone with Luffy of all people. I'm tired of this boring old house. I've never been to the place with all the big buildings, so that's where we're going, he said abruptly, kicking on his sandals and grabbing what he hoped were Momo's shoes, shoving them in her face with a grin. Wait, these aren't my asa, she shouted as Luffy kicked open the front door. What the is that? The guards that were standing in front of the doors panicked. Hey, where are you kids going? We're getting out of the house, to adventure, Luffy shouted gleefully, already nearing the gate. Luffy, at least let me get the right shoes, Momo begged. She had already accepted her fate and forgotten all about the exam. Oh, well, you kids have fun then, said the guard on the right. The guard on the left whispered to his partner. Can you believe it? She's going outside. Yosh, here we go, Luffy declared, jumping way higher than he needed to get over the gate. Slow down. Momo was terrified, feeling the rush of air whip her hair around. Looking down, she noticed they were already well above the mansion. Luffy shifted her into more of a piggyback position, allowing her to cling to him with all her strength. She was sending whatever prayers she had to whatever deity there was that she'd survive. Ha 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 ha, hold on. This might get bumpy. Luffy hit the sidewalk. Any normal person's legs would have been destroyed by the impact. Luffy, I swear you're going to give me a heart attack, Momo yelped, holding on to Luffy so tightly she might have worried about him if he wasn't rubber. Despite the absurdity of it all, she did find she was enjoying herself. After a couple more jumps, ear-destroying screams and a speed that would make even Ingenium jealous, they arrived in front of a big mall, which Luffy had the luck of stumbling upon. It looked more active than the rest of the city and smelled of food, so he figured this was a good place to start. Okay. Put me down. Momo gasped for air after arriving at the mall, a place she'd never been before. This place looks way more interesting. Look at all the people. Come on, let's get closer. Luffy ran inside. Luckily for Momo, she managed to get a hold of his arm, making it stretch considerably and getting them some weird looks. Luffy grunted as he got yanked backwards, turning to glare at her. What now? First off, do you have any money? Momo questioned as he walked back. Luffy checked his pockets only to find them bare of anything remotely valuable. That's what I thought. However, I was lucky enough to have my wallet on me when you started running like a madman. Shishishi, sorry about that. It was fun though, Luffy giggled, half apologetically. So you have money, that's great. Let's eat, I'm hungry. You're always hungry, Momo muttered under her breath. Second off, you gave me the wrong shoes, so now I have to go to a shoe shop. Not to mention you didn't even let me get dressed properly. Luffy looked her up and down, unable to see the issue with shorts, belt, and a t-shirt. Who cares? Just walk barefooted, I used to do it all the time. Luffy said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, although to him, it was. Fortunately, I'm not you and will not walk barefoot and risk getting cut. So, we're going to a shoe shop first, and then we can get something to eat, alright? Momo left no room for disagreement. But Luffy didn't get the chance to continue. Or I'm calling my father, and I'll have him pick us up, Momo said sternly. On one hand, Mr. Yuichi couldn't stop Luffy if he tried. On the other hand, he really wanted to hang out with Momo. Finny. Luffy whined, and the pair finally made their way inside the mall. Thank God he believed me. Having my wallet on me was pure luck. But my phone is still at home. I've never been around so many strangers. Momo stared at everyone with unease. However, she kept her back straight and her mind sharp. She didn't want to be caught off guard in this place, but they still threw her off. The most people she'd ever been around were at her private school, and without any real friends, she was never invited to the mall. Luffy was just staring with stars in his eye at all the attractions. The mall was a huge place full of brightly flashing lights, screens that played ads, loud noises, thousands of smells to choose from, all emanating from the food court, and was basically an understimulated ADHD Brazilian's dreamland. Luffy was mainly focused on the shiny water fountains and the performers performing various scam tricks. Luffy, stay close to me, we wouldn't want to lose each other here, Momo scolded, much like a mother taking care of her unruly children. Luffy wasn't really too worried, even if he did get lost. Fate had a silly way of bringing him back to his friends. And if that didn't work, he'd figure something else out. It took a couple of minutes for them to find a shoe shop. Inside there was a numerous amount of shoes in various shapes and colors. The shop was separated by gender. There was a cashier, boredly scrolling on his phone, and one pink-skinned, black-sclare, mini-horns having girl who was browsing the store. She threw a quick glance at the new arrivals before dismissing them and going back to her shopping spree. Okay Luffy, you can wait here or find some new shoes, I don't care which, just stay in here while I pick out a pair of sneakers, Momo instructed, then quickly left him by himself to get a pair of shoes. Shoes. I already have my sandals, I don't need anything more, besides I'm hungry, Luffy thought to himself. Well, if he didn't need any shoes, then he didn't see the harm in following his nose to some kind of food place, leaving Momo behind. The pink-skinned girl, who had overheard the conversation, raised an eyebrow at the straw hat wearing teen who just left the other girl high and dry. It took Momo a couple of minutes to decide what looked good, eventually settling on a new pair of white sneakers. After the purchase, she scanned the shop to realize Luffy was nowhere to be found. He couldn't stay put for 5 minutes. Momo grumbled quietly. She turned around as she heard giggling coming from a friendly-looking customer. Don't worry girl, he just went to that ramen place across from here, the pink-skinned girl told her. She sympathized with Momo. She had to babysit her younger brother more than a few times, so she's become an expert at locating wandering persons. Oh, thank you very much, Momo thanked with a quick bow, quickly running to the place she just mentioned. No prob girlie, good luck. The pink-skinned girl waved goodbye, watching her quickly retreating figure. It didn't take long to find Luffy. He was currently pouting at a waitress who was smiling awkwardly at him. There you are. You couldn't stay still for a second. What are you doing? Momo was a bit frustrated by his sudden disappearance. Sorry, I was hungry and you were taking forever. But thank goodness you're here. This lady won't give me food. She says I have to pay first. Why can't I pay later? Luffy explained. The waitress just looked at Momo, silently begging for help with her eyes. Momo just sighed heavily and waved her off. If they served you first, then you could just run away without paying. Just sit down. I've got money with me, so let's eat. She made her way to a table. Luffy followed along, muttering. That's the whole point. He was used to dine and dashing. Momo was speculating why he needed so much food. Perhaps it was because of his quirk. She almost hoped that wasn't the case. She'd feel really bad if it was. They sat at the table where they were given menus. The place was decently packed. Luffy ordered half the menu after Momo said it was all right, cheering loudly, causing Momo to blush in second-hand embarrassment. The food wasn't done yet, but Momo had other problems. Luffy, I have to powder my nose, so don't go anywhere until I come back. I'm being serious. Momo said, interrupting Luffy from his chant of food. Food, food. Luffy just looked confused. The ladies' room. She repeated. Luffy just tilted his head. What's the ladies' room? A room full of ladies. She means to piss. Interrupted a very annoyed customer. He had spiky blonde hair, and was sitting at the table adjacent to them, having to listen to Luffy's chanting and their pointless banter. He was at his wit's end. Yes, that's it exactly. She quickly left the table, turning red as a tomato. Asterisk, this cannot get any more embarrassing. Asterisk. Dumbass, learn to talk to girls, idiot. The spiky-haired teen insulted as Luffy was handed 4 bowls of ramen and a couple dumplings. Luffy couldn't care less, all too familiar with public scorn. Besides, with food in front of his face, he'd rather eat than entertain the stranger's goading. 13 minutes and 20 bowls of ramen later, Luffy started to get a bit suspicious at Momo's absence. Was she dining and dashing? He hoped so. He took a second to concentrate on her aura, straightening immediately when he noticed the fear shivering from it. He shot out of his seat and bolted outside, muttering a quiet, "Shit," that had the rude stranger staring at him in confusion. 2 minutes earlier. Momo sighed. Who would have guessed they shoved the nearest bathroom in a small alley? I've got to get back before Luffy does something stupid like pick a fight with that customer. Now where is that ramen place? She grumbled aloud. A bad habit, yes. But she didn't care enough to fix it. What's the hurry? Yaoyorozu, hissed a calm and collected voice behind her. Who are yo? Momo wasn't even given the opportunity to scream as the masked stranger put his grimy hand on her mouth and a blade to her neck. Don't move a muscle, the villain whispered in her ear, uncomfortably close. Do as I say and you'll get out of this alive, nod if you understand. Asterisk, who would have thought? Such a rich brat walking around by herself. Momo tensed up instantly. This was bad. She was caught off guard and wasn't experienced enough to get out of this unscathed, especially with cold steel shoved against her. Adrenaline leaked its way through her system, causing her to shake in fear. Asterisk, what do I do? Can I grab the knife? No, one wrong move and I'll bleed out in an instant. Can I create anything in time? No, he'll just cut me before I finish. Holy shit. Do I just hope someone notices? Her breathing became shaky. Her chances to get out of this encounter rapidly decreased. Fight, flight, or freeze, and she just had to choose freeze. I said nod if you understand, bitch. The villain spat. Momo felt tears well up in the corner of her eyes, and she nodded quickly, panic clogging her throat, feeling the knife scrape against her neck. The villain grinned, about to speak again when he spotted the silhouette of another kid at the entrance to the alleyway. Momo, are you okay? Do you know this guy? Luffy's tone dropped, his straw hat overshadowing his eyes, making him a weirdly intimidating figure. The villain tightened his grip over Momo's mouth, letting out a wheezy laugh. Of course she does, right? The tip of his blade punctured her neck. A tear leaked out of her eye. And who are you supposed to be? Some knight in shining armor? Come to rescue the helpless princess? He scorned. Momo's gaze turned stony in anger. I'm her friend. Luffy threatened, taking a step forward. One more step and her neck will look like a zipper. He growled, nervously taking a step back. Who do you think you are? Do you want her dead? Luffy's eyes flashed dangerously. I'm just asking my friend here if I can borrow some money. That's all. If you do anything, I'm not afraid to gut her, he said calmly. Momo's mind was racing at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I'm sorry, Momo. Don't worry and stay still, Luffy apologized, making eye contact with Momo, almost saying I got you with just his expression. Hey, Straw Hat, don't do anything stupid. The bastard didn't get to finish his sentence as he was overtaken by pure, unblemished terror, like prey before a predator. His hands shook violently, the blade dropped, he stepped backwards, and collapsed to the floor, eyes gone white. For a couple of seconds the only noise you could hear was the metallic clink of the knife hitting the ground. Momo took in a deep breath, feeling around her neck. She had no clue what happened, but now the villain was on the ground, and Luffy was walking up to her. Momo, are you okay? Luffy didn't miss the way her eyes darted towards him, face filled with confused gratitude and wariness. I'm fine. Let's just go home, okay? Momo wiped the remaining tears from her eyes and breathed deeply, trying to get her racing heart and mind back under control. Luffy knew she wasn't fine. Okay, are you sure? Momo interrupted. I'm fine. Luffy took the hint for once and kept quiet. It didn't take long for the pair of them to get on a train heading for a stop near the Yaoyorozu mansion. The conversation between the two didn't pick up again for a little while, Momo being lost in thought, and Luffy letting her have that time to think. Luffy, what did you do to that guy? She said quietly. They were the only people in the train cabin, sitting across from each other. It was Conqueror's haki. Luffy said simply, it's one of my abilities, I used it to knock him out. Conqueror's haki? Momo asked, trying to make sure she heard him right. Yeah, I learned how to do it in my training that I told you about earlier. There are other types too, like armament haki and observation haki. He explained. That guy was so weak though, so I didn't need the others. Momo had to take a few seconds to process what he just said. Are you the only one who can use haki? No, everyone can use haki. You just have to unlock it first. But only a rare few have conquerors. Luffy continued. And you are that rare person. Yeah. Not getting a response, he decided to elaborate more. Conqueror's haki is willpower weaponized. Willpower weaponized. Momo repeated it like it was a bad joke. It's the power of going into a battle without a doubt. But I used observation haki to find you. You were gone for a while and I got worried. Okay, thank you for saving me. The rest of the train ride was in silence, so was the walk home, dinner. Not another word was spoken between the two until the next morning. Momo was standing at the front of the mansion. She had gathered everything she would need for today, plus a little extra. Luffy made his way to Momo. The butler had gathered all of his stuff for him. Momo, are you feeling better yet? Luffy asked nicely. Momo sheepishly rubbed the back of her neck. Yeah, sorry for the silent treatment, I feel better about it now. She'd spent a lot of last night thinking over what Luffy did for her. Luffy's face split into a huge grin. Good. Are you ready to go then? Momo nodded and Luffy opened the door, ready for another grand adventure. That's it for today, thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to stay tuned for the next episode.